Hello and welcome back to Harry Shoots People. Recently I decided to pick up some of Harmen's new offering, that being Pheonix 200 in 120 format. Pheonix 200 is the new colour film offering from Harmen or Ilford and was released earlier this year in 35mm format and is now available in 120. And since I never shot the 35mm version, I decided it was time to try it out. So I just went to the camera shop and I bought myself 2 rolls of the new Harmen Pheonix 200 on 120. $10.99 each, not bad. And also got all these small goodies with it, which I thought was quite a nice touch. It also comes with a small little book with a bunch of sample pictures showing you how to shoot it. We'll see how this goes. So, with the film loaded in the RB67, I decided the first test would be to sort of test it out in natural daylight settings. So we headed down to a nearby park to feed some squirrels and hopefully get some good pictures. Okay, I guess it's time to address the poorly exposed elephant in the room. As I said before, I hadn't shot Pheonix 200 when it was available on 35mm, and for some bizarre reason I decided not to do any research whatsoever on how to shoot Pheonix before I then went ahead and shot it. And it turns out that could have been a bad idea. As you might notice, with these first 3 exposures, a lot of the highlights are blown out, particularly in these 2. The first image, the sharpness and clarity just aren't there, and the image seems muddy and flat. On the 4th try, I did expose the image slightly better. However, this time it is still underexposed a little bit, and you can see the lost in shadow detail in the background. So in retrospect, now might be a good time to do some research and see what went wrong. The Harmen website describes Pheonix as Harmen Pheonix 200 120 is a medium format, quirky, experimental colour negative film with high contrast, strong visible grain and plenty of analog character. It delivers punchy, vibrant colours, although they react differently to different scanners and settings. Getting the exposure right will certainly help to get the best results, so we suggest metering for the midtones to retain shadow or highlight detail. Over or underexposure is not Pheonix's friend. So taken away from that, we've got high contrast, very strong visible grain and very little latitude. So knowing all that ahead of time could have been very useful if you wanted to shoot film properly and know what you're doing. I actually watched Caleb's video where he tests out Harmen Pheonix and he suggests to rate it at 100 ISO instead of the box speed 200, so maybe that's something to try in the future. With all that being said, here's another image I shot that day. Probably my sharpest and favourite image from the day. The subject's pretty much exposed spot on and the shallow depth of field creates a nice fall off behind her. However, all the greenery in the background does kind of blur together, and combined with the bloom from the sunlight above, it sort of just draws your eye away from the subject. And here's one of me getting it completely wrong again. And on the other side of the coin, here's me kind of getting it right. In all fairness, I was changing my settings pretty much with every photo, that's why they're also kind of drastically different. However, maybe an experimental film isn't the time to experiment. So that was the first roll. Overall a failure, but we learned some lessons and we got some usable pictures. Now on to the second roll. So guys, it's day 2. We're going to shoot the latter of the Harmen Pheonix today. Today's plan is just out for a coffee at the minute. Got a nice cinnamon brioche bun, and then we're going to head over to Mansfield with Henry to go see Nathan, and then we're going to take the rest of the medium format portraits of Nathan and probably a couple of Henry too to really test out what we can do. Dope. So guys, we made it. BMX capital of the world, Mansfield. You know. So after arriving in Mansfield and meeting up with Nathan and Henry, we headed out to look for some nice backdrops and some good locations, and we ended up finding this sort of football pitch with nice lighting, so we got down to business. As you can see, the sort of bloom and the blown out highlights are still here, but slightly lessened this time. I knew I wanted a shot of both Nathan and Henry, as I don't have too much experience framing two models, so I decided to have Nath behind the goal leaning over and Henry in front of it, and I think it came out quite well. Still a little underexposed, but a good shot nonetheless. Probably my favourite from the second roll. I just know if I'd have shot this on Kodak Gold, it would have been portfolio worthy. Unfortunately, since the pitch was pretty small and didn't really have any inspiring spots, we headed down further into the park, into more of like a grassy area, to take some full body portraits. Cheers, Henry. I think it's most evident that Pheonix is still an experimental film, the way it renders colours and especially skin tones. As you can see from the clips taken on our phones and then comparing them to how it came out on the film, the colours just aren't a one-to-one replication, which is fine, but just something to be aware of if you are going to shoot this film. Alternatively, completely could have been my fault yet again.
Probably for the best, isn't it? Oh god.
Similar to with Michael's shot, we decided to take a sillier one here too.
I hope it was just like brief eye contact with the camera.
Obviously this isn't a work of art, this one. Since it was 200 speed and we were losing light, I had to open the shutter for a lot longer than I normally would for this shot. I think we were shooting on like a quarter of a second or something, so Nath's just a big blur on the screen. However, probably the best metered and exposed photo, so I guess there's a win in there somewhere. At this point, it ended up being a bit too dark and we couldn't really find anywhere else we wanted to shoot. So I decided to save the last couple of frames for a different day. And that ended up being Maya and I heading down to the park to sort of recreate those pictures with the squirrels to varying degrees of success.
Try the bananas, darling, they're dashing.
Unfortunately, it was sort of the same conditions as when I'd shot that last photo of Nath, so we had to open the shutter up to again a quarter of a second, and there was just too much going on, and I was shooting it handheld as well, and if you know the RB, you know that it's a very heavy camera. Should have definitely used a tripod. Also, squirrels move at a lot quicker than 1/4 of a second. So there's a lot of motion blur. However, I did manage to shoot this. Which is probably the best from that day. It's still blurry, but there's a little bit of improvement there, as you can see from the prior photo. So, in conclusion, would I recommend Harmen Pheonix 200 on medium format? In my experience, as you've seen, the film comes out very muddy, flat, and just dull looking. Colours and skin tones aren't rendered properly, and the film is very susceptible to under or overexposure. I think it's a very tricky film to get right. However, what I've seen of people getting it right, it looks great. That being said, Harmen do make consumers and customers very aware of the fact that it's an experimental film and a work in progress. So maybe those issues will be fixed later down the line. Maybe also do some research on the film before you shoot it. As you can see with my results, they weren't the best because I didn't do that. My personal conclusion is to just go out and shoot the film yourself and see what results you get. You get to see the issues that I had in mine and sort of have the knowledge to overcome those and see what this film provides for you. I think it's a great film to support right now, as well as the sales of this show how interested the film community is in receiving new films, be them incredibly outstanding or not. But still, I think we'd all like Pheonix to do well to inspire other companies to start producing their own new films as well. So the more people that go out and buy it, the better. And also I'm very excited to see what everyone else does with this film. Thank you for watching.